Welcome to the first episode of the SoccerWire podcast of 2020. This is Chris Hummer, filling in for regular host Mark Serber, who is gallivanting around India for the next 2 weeks. So all you Mark haters out there, after his rant on the last episode about U.S. soccer's role in the youth game, can actually stay tuned for this one. Mark will be back later in the month, I promise. In this week's episode, we'll review the top youth soccer headlines from the week, welcome some new featured player recruits, and preview next week's United Soccer Coaches Convention going on in Baltimore. And we'll go right to the source for that with USC Director of Operations and Events, Geoff VanDeusen, who will join us live. It's January 7th, 2020, and the SoccerWire podcast starts now. We are back with you for the weekly show that focuses on the youth game and player development in the United States. As I said in the open, this is Chris Hummer filling in for regular host Mark Serber. Once again, we're joined by Managing Editor Quinn Casteel, resident analyst Charles Boehm, and the woman that makes it all possible, producer and editor Bridget Baker. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Anybody do anything special?
Very little. Very little. Tried to watch as much English soccer as possible. There's a lot of it on.
Yeah, the festive period.
Indeed. But stinks for the players, great for the fans.
I was fortunate enough to attend a black tie event in downtown D.C. that I didn't get the memo on the dress code and showed up in club wear, so that was fun.
Wow.
Classy.
Really, exactly. Yeah,
don't worry, though. Marcelo Bielsa apparently does that. The Leeds manager rolls in at all times and places in tracksuit. So
well, I embraced it, and I actually pretended that I was the most confident person there instead of the most embarrassed. Okay, let's get started, as always, with the review of the top recent news headlines on SoccerWire.com with Quinn Casteel. Quinn, you look well rested and sporting a fun Ralph Lauren polo bear T-shirt that must have been the gift of the year for you. What do you have for us?
Yeah, the shirt's a polo. It's a bear on skis. So, who doesn't love a bear skiing? As far as the news, there's a lot, obviously, to cover, but some really big announcements from U.S. Soccer the past couple of days. We now have a U20 women's national team coach and a U20 men's national team coach.
Woo!
Yeah, and, a big hire, certainly on the women's side, with Laura Harvey. Being pulled in from Utah Royals FC. Harvey, she's known as one of the best coaches in the women's game, and she comes in after 2 years with Utah Royals FC, and then prior to that, 5 years also in the NWSL with Seattle Reign. And on the men's side, U.S. Soccer brings in Anthony Hudson, who has previously coached the New Zealand and the Bahrain senior national teams, and most recently coached as the head coach with Colorado Rapids in MLS.
Anthony actually got his professional coaching start right here in the D.C. area with Real Maryland. I believe at the time he was the youngest professional soccer coach sort of in history. I don't know if in the United States or so forth, but he certainly has been around the world.
This is, it's first of all, for those keeping track at home, this is the number of vacancies on the U.S. national team staff as a whole has gone down from 13 down to 11. It sounds like we'll be getting more news of some of those other vacancies being filled. Although I'm not certain they're going to get them all banged out in the next few months here. We shall see. But the Hudson hire has been greeted with a little bit of confusion, perhaps skepticism, because his most recent gig in charge of the Colorado Rapids was simply woeful. I don't think there's any other way to say it than that. In terms of all-time points per game, he ranks as in results terms, again, he's the worst coach in MLS history. He went 8-26-9 in league play in about a year and a half with Colorado. And I have to say, I've had the pleasure of sitting down and doing interviews with Anthony a few years ago when he came through D.C. with the New Zealand national team. He's a very smart guy. Good person by every account I've gotten. Grown up in the game, his dad, Alan, was a top-level professional with the England national team, Chelsea, and a number of other clubs. Grew up kind of literally was reared with guys like Harry Redknapp coming around the house. So he lives and breathes the game. However, there's a lot of questions about whether his track record is quite up to the high standards that people would typically have for an influential national team like the U20s.
Yeah, but what's the role of a U20, basically a youth coach? One of, like you said, there's so many openings. Is it not to sort of vet and prepare the next generation talent? Is it more of a teaching role and a talent identification role than wins or losses? And some people just might not get on in the right league or with the right club, but maybe they're good teachers of the game. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's true, and that's I think that's the positive angle to take on this, is that this level results certainly factor in, right? Because it's a high level. This is the ante room in a sense for the senior national team, and if he can show that he is able to coach up, to spot and cultivate talent, and prepare them for the senior national team, then maybe it'd be a good hire. The question is, has his past shown a strong enough evidence of that? Right.
And as a quick footnote, I have one more question I want to ask you guys on this story. But as a quick footnote before we move on, another one of the recent headlines that came out over the past couple weeks is Raphael Wicki departing after a very brief, very unsuccessful tenure as US U17 men's national team head coach. He was the head coach for less than a year, and they finished almost dead last at the U17 World Cup. So U.S. Soccer, as far as hiring youth men's national team coaches, they are really hoping that Hudson is going to be a hit. And then the last question I wanted to ask you guys is, I think it's a fair question because it's pretty rare that you have a U20 men's and U20 women's head coach hired within a couple of days of each other. So Laura Harvey, Anthony Hudson, were name association. Who do you think is more well-known and I guess a bigger overall figure in the kind of the U.S. soccer, American soccer zeitgeist?
I'll answer this and saying at the start that we live in a little bit of a bubble here, so I recognize that this may not match with what a rank and file or a more casual fan has, but I think it's Harvey by a clear margin, partly because she's spent a lot of time in the system here. She's a character. She has a little bit of an online persona. She's a fun Twitter follow. She's just kind of a cool personality, and she's definitely seems to build strong relationships with most of her players that work under her. She's won things. She had the reign, kind of consistent, constant competitors for honors in the early years of NWSL. Whereas Hudson is a little bit more of an outsider. He's been around the world. He's English by birth. Although technically speaking, he's born in the U.S., but he's an English American, I guess we can say. I believe his dad was playing for the Sounders, so he happened to be born in Seattle back in the 70s. And so he's just not as familiar. And unfortunately, the perceptions that typical American soccer person has are driven by the big leagues and the big teams, and he's been working in sort of more out-of-the-way spots. So he's got some things to prove, whereas I think Harvey will have a little bit more capital.
Yeah, I agree with Charlie. I mean, it's Laura, and again, we've all worked in the pro game, so it is a little tough to think about, but Laura has an amazing track record. She's won things. She's at Arsenal. She comes to Seattle, does well. And she was it was almost, her decision, I would guess, and whether or not to coach the women's national team. She was rumored, once before, and the last one.
I think she was a finalist, for the senior job.
Yeah. And I believe she was actually favored to be the England coach, and then Seattle. That was when Seattle, it was Utah. That's when she moved from Seattle to Utah. So. It made her an offer she couldn't refuse when Utah came into the league, and so she stuck around. And I think certainly this could also be seen as the Laura Harvey hire might be sort of a person in waiting for the next national team job, whereas for Anthony, it's really just a challenge ahead to get back some credibility in the U.S. game. And I think he has, everybody should give him a benefit of the doubt for sure.
I think we also can't, it's impossible to separate these hires from the overarching ongoing story that these coaches, as far as we know, are subject to the full-time Chicago residency requirement, which has been, by multiple reports, a huge complicating factor in getting these positions filled. Now we have multiple former youth national team coaches. Tab Ramos and Dave Vandenberg are the two that come to mind, having gone on the record in a recent Wall Street Journal piece saying that that this wouldn't work for them. This didn't make sense to them, and it was a problem. So Ernie Stewart, the GM, seems to have doubled down on this idea that they want everybody in Soccer House all the time, even though it's also clear that Soccer House is bursting at the seams and may not be the long-term headquarters. So unfortunately, the Federation has sort of painted themselves into this corner that we can't help but look at all these hires in that light.
If they were going to pick one place to bring all the coaches together, in theory, that's a great place, but why not put them out in L.A. or in the new training center or, down someplace warm where they can be outside the fields? Why do the coaches have to be around administrators? So not a bad idea to have all the coaches in the same room so everybody's speaking the same language. But Chicago might not be where a lot of some of the world's best coaches want to move their families.
As far as the women's side, U.S. Soccer poaching Laura Harvey and Vlatko and Danovsky, who are known as two of the best NWSL coaches since the league started. So, interesting move there just to bring those two coaches in within a few months of each other. Really
underlines the different stratuses that the men's and women's programs are at right now.
Sorry, I don't know my own headlines, but did Laura leave Utah, or is this just an add-on? Really?
Yes.
Okay.
No, she's full-time.
Wow. Okay. So, and just to bring this back a little bit, we cover youth soccer. We opened the show by saying we cover the American youth game. So, this for me, this sounds like a pro national team type of story, but the vacancies in the youth national team setups and our focus on this topic, the U20 is a critical age group to really probably battle test who might be those Division I scholarship athletes and to really expose them to what a national team environment's like, playing against grown men and women in whichever respect. So that's why I think we're covering here. It's quite important.
Yeah, and to transition to another youth national team that also has a head coach, the U17 women's national team, coached by Tracy Kevins. They've kicked off their first training camp of the new year down in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. And talk about a key age group. The U17 women are preparing for the 2020 U17 FIFA Women's World Cup, which is going to be played in India this November. So very, very important cycle right now for that age group. And just highlighting the training camp roster that is already underway is 15-year-old phenom Olivia Moultrie has gotten her first call-up at the U17 level. And Moultrie, of course, made waves last year when she became the youngest American female player to turn pro, joining the Portland Thorns Academy system and signing an endorsement deal with Nike. And she's the youngest player participating in camp this week. So it'll be very interesting to see if she is able to hang on to a roster spot and maybe represent the U.S. at a World Cup.
I love that story when it came out. I think the gut reaction was everybody's like, are you kidding? She's too young to play at the pro level. But the endorsement money was probably the catalyst there, I would say. But the more, and we have other, there definitely, we're hearing one and possibly two collegiate bound players, youth players, skipping that along the lines of a Mallory Pugh and possibly going pro this year. So, the more of this that we see, I think the more it bodes well for future editions of the women's national team program.
Still takes a lot of bravery to pass up the college ride and the college game that the vast majority of elite girls players take that path. And so I even if I don't necessarily agree with the Moultrie decision, maybe that's the dad in me, you got to respect the ones who are the canaries in the coal mine, or that that try something new, that strike out on a different path.
Well, who knows? I mean, the college scholarship is money situated, so that's taken care of. She could be going to college locally while she's training. So, I mean, those boxes could all be ticked for her.
Yeah, we'll see. And I as far as I know, I'm not sure if it's a lock that she'll even make the roster for the World Cup. So we'll see. Definitely some really tough competition, even for somebody as talented as she is.
Well, that must be why Mark went to India. He's pre-scouting secretly for the U.S. national team.
Yeah, and just moving on, I guess, to our last story here. Over the weekend, Stanford junior midfielder and national champion Catarina Macario of Stanford, and on the men's side, Clemson forward Robbie Robinson received the Hermann Trophy honors. Hermann Trophy, of course, is the top honor in college soccer. It goes to the most outstanding players each year on the men's and women's sides. Macario is a repeat winner. She won in 2018, and then this year does it again with Stanford in her junior year while helping them win the national title. Robinson with Clemson was tied for first in the country with 18 goals and also fifth in the nation with 9 assists.
And a quick word on this. Rob Robinson has left college early. He's a member of the 2020 Generation Adidas class, which is an MLS initiative to offer guaranteed contracts and educational assistance to underclass players to come out of school early and turn pro. So we expect that he'll be one of the top picks in this week's MLS Super Draft. And there's rumblings that Macario and her teammate Sophia Smith are considering leaving school early to turn pro this winter as well.
Definitely some new professional prospects coming out of Clemson program. But last year's draft of Sam Staub was the beginning of that. I believe at the time she was the highest picked player to ever go NWSL draft from Clemson, but perhaps she'll have competition in that category here. Excellent work as always, Quinn. To read these stories and more, be sure to log on to SoccerWire.com. And to make sure we have your club news and tournament news and league news, just send us your press releases or tips to news@thesoccerwire.com or just reach out on Twitter @thesoccerwire.
Get your club or league in the game with SoccerWire, the leading community news, advice, and search engine for youth soccer. For a base annual fee, we'll take a huge bite out of your marketing and branding so you can focus more on where the cleats touch the turf. The best part? All the extra branding and benefits are free because the full price of the annual membership is returned to you in advertising credits. We have 3 great options that are sure to meet the marketing and advertising needs of your organization. For more information, visit SoccerWire.com and click Be a Premier Partner under the Premier Partner section on the left side of the page, or email ads@SoccerWire.com. That's ads@SoccerWire.com.
Welcome back to the SoccerWire podcast. We're speaking via Skype with United Soccer Coaches Director of Operations and Events, Geoff VanDeusen. Geoff, we know you must be extremely busy, so thanks so much for taking a few minutes to catch up with us.
My honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, I'm here with Charles Boehm again, and we just want to dig in a little bit and let our listeners know what the USC Convention is all about, and maybe just dig into a couple of questions. This event has been going on since 1941. And it didn't take a break for the war, and for the first 30 years, it was in New York. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's New York was pretty much that East Coast corridor there was really the growth of the association and especially the convention where all these coaches could get together and meet and talk and grow the game.
Yeah, I mean it's and I think I've heard the statistic that it's the largest gathering of coaches of any one sport in the world.
It sure is.
Okay. And just so our listeners understand some of your background, you've been involved with it used to be NSCAA, but now it's been rebranded to USC. But you've since the mid '90s, you've been a college coach at multiple locations, both men's and women's, and you've been in the Kansas City area for quite a long time, and a FIFA match commissioner, which we might ask you a little bit what that's about, and also coached youth soccer for 10 years, and you have some news that your own daughter just committed to play college, so congratulations there. But for the last 10 years, you've been a full-time employee of USC and helping to put on this event, right?
Yeah, it's the game's given me everything in my life. It means a lot. I started playing when I was 5 and was able to go and play collegiately, and then coach collegiately, and now I've had all 3 kids play the game, and it's given a lot to our family. And obviously now that I get to go to work every day in this environment and help grow the game and make coaches better, it's an honor that I don't take lightly. It's something that with this event and with my day to day, is I eat, sleep, and drink the game and love it. And the convention is absolutely that. That's the largest coach association in the world, and the largest coaches event and gathering. And it's an awesome 5 days.
Certainly, I mean, Charlie and I have been going to that event since the mid 2000s, if not earlier, and it's quite an experience. I think if you've never been to the show, no matter what your expectations are ahead of time, when you get there, it really opens your eyes to a lot of opportunities and so forth. Let's cover the basics right up front on the show itself. It's being hosted in Baltimore this year, and I think this is anecdotal, but could you confirm that Baltimore, it seems to come there a lot? Is it one of the most successful cities for the association from a financial perspective and attendance perspective?
Yes, it is. It's the 7th time we'll be in Baltimore. And Baltimore it's got a beautiful Inner Harbor area. And what I look for, and I have to I decide, or I guess I present to the board which cities we should attend, and why we should attend these cities, and why we should bring our event to a city. And Baltimore fits the mold, or it sets the standard as far as we want a campus environment. We want all the coaches, all the exhibitors, everybody that comes to our event. It's about 14,000 people that come. We want everybody to be able to bump into each other and have that campus environment. So we've got about 10,500 hotel room nights that so the economic impact to the city is quite astronomical. We want bars, we want restaurants, we want things to do right there. And that Inner Harbor in Baltimore gives us that atmosphere. Everything's connected almost to the convention center. So it's a pretty awesome environment.
And I'm curious as to if you could give us, I don't know if you have any facts or figures or any tidbits that you like to share. The scale of it is so incredible, especially to encounter firsthand. What are some of the sort of economic impacts and the things that maybe kind of underline how big you guys have grown and what an event this has grown into?
So facts and figures of the event. So the event itself, we have about 200 education sessions, and those education sessions are basically live field sessions. So we build 3 fields. 2 are artificial surface, and the other one's a mini pitch. Some more of the futsal area, and these the 2 artificial surfaces, they're small little stadiums. Basically, one seats about 1,200 and one seats about 2,000, and live field demonstrations. And then we've got a bunch of lecture or classroom sessions, which are roundtables, one-on-one sessions, straight up lectures, and panel sessions. And so there's about 200 of those. There's between 500 and 600 meetings. And that doesn't mean anything to you until you look at who's meeting. And it's the federation, it's different soccer organizations, it's different collegiate conferences, it's Maryland Youth Soccer Association. There is meetings all over the place, and it's between 500 and 600 meetings there. And then you've got the business side of the game, where we have about 300 companies that come into Baltimore, and they exhibit. So the exhibitor aspect is you can walk through and see the latest and greatest in technology, which we've got the Innovation Hub this year, which is brand new. We've got a nice big sponsor with Verizon. And so we've got 12 companies that are going to come in and present and have special kiosks to show the technology of the game. and how their company is helping coaches coach better and make better players. But then, that exhibit hall is also where you can go and find companies to help your team fundraise, or your club fundraise, or your school fundraise, travel companies, tournaments, equipment. So we kind of tag it as the business of soccer is done here, and it's face to face. It's face to face networking.
See, I consider it. I love the exhibit hall because it reminds me of the Mos Eisley Cantina in the Star Wars scene, where every incredible creature and odd thing from around the galaxy is in one place. Because I've seen some of the most cool and clever, and also some of the most outright bizarre products I could ever conceive of in this sport being offered for sale, or trying to get someone else to invest in it or whatever. And it's just fascinating.
I love that. I've heard us, somebody referred to us as the Lollapalooza of soccer. So there's a lot of neat takes on what this event is, but that exhibit hall, I tell you what, on Thursday night is such a buzz. The energy in the building and is amazing with all of our attendees trying to get into that hall, and the lineup is amazing because a lot of the companies give away free stuff.
Speaking of which, can you confirm or deny that there'll be free beer on offer on opening night again?
There is always free beer on Thursday night. So always free beer.
That is certainly.
Don't forget, folks.
I have a couple. Of great photos of them.
And strategically placed. I could tell you that too. So yeah, the free beer. It's everybody wants a free beer. So if you're lucky, you can get more than that. But it's a good time.
Charles used to play in a band called Free Beer. They sold every place out they went to, and they advertised it.
Yeah, right. I was curious also, one of the big changes this year, and I know it's not necessarily part of the convention, but you guys have always partnered up for going back some decades now with MLS for the Super Draft to take place in conjunction with the convention, and they're not doing a physical event this year. And I was wondering if you had a take on that. Does that open up space? Is there any kind of loss there? Is MLS still going to have a presence to be part of this whole kind of family reunion vibe at the convention?
Well, first and foremost, the NWSL is going to have their collegiate draft on Thursday, so that's exciting. That was a decision not to have the draft by MLS. I think that was more of an internal decision as far as how their league is changing and growing, and that was a decision they made internally to go to more of an electronic type draft. For reasons that make sense to them. Obviously, we love to have MLS around. Their presence is still going to be large at the event. I believe there's 16 sessions that are led by MLS clubs and some sort of coaching staff member at the event. They also have the MLS affiliate program. That is kind of, they're having a workshop at the event as well. So MLS will still have a huge presence at the event, but it's just not the live draft. And it's pretty disappointing because I was always hoping to get drafted and they never called my name.
Yeah, so. I know the feeling. I know the disappointment. Another thing we noticed, it seems like, and you'd be much better positioned to talk about this. It seems like in the last few years, you guys kind of struck out towards some different places, went to the West Coast for the first time in a long time. I believe it was 2017. Could you talk about the thought that went into those things, and how do you kind of find the balance? Because I know you want to be close to your membership in your rank and file, but also try and expand the awareness and the exposure to the event.
Well, it's true that largely we've been an East Coast membership-driven association, and as we grow as an association and the game grows, we have to continue to hit our membership across the country. And actually, next year we head to Anaheim. Which we're extremely excited about. It's a beautiful convention center, and it's got that campus environment feel that that we love. Last year we were in the Midwest in Chicago, so we try and move this around. And I say that the West Coast needs a convention, and the convention needs the West Coast. So we're excited to get back there. LA was very, very successful for us, and excited about moving this around, because coaches always can't make it every year, and we want to make sure that we're covering the whole country.
Jeff, did going to LA, did you see an uptick in memberships from the West Coast, and do they sign up at the show, or?
Yeah, we did. It's interesting, because if you've never gone before, it's difficult to explain what energy, the networking opportunities, what the convention is like. And so it's something that we have to really work hard at doing. But as our membership continues to grow, West Coast is obviously a key target, because there's a ton of kids playing in the West Coast and a ton of coaches, and so we're now thinking more nationally than just kind of the East Coast. So it's been a fun challenge for us.
So, Jeff, you mentioned the number of sessions that you're having, and especially the field sessions. It sounds like a stadium big enough to host some USL2 teams in there, possibly. But are there any big names? Like, I know in the past you've had some English Premier League coaches and so forth there before. Any big names to look out for this year?
Yeah, there's always big names, and what I love about this event is there's something for everyone, for a youth coach, for a high school coach, for a collegiate coach, for professional coaches. And so, when we put together this program and this education platform, we try and you have to weigh the balance of celebrity coach versus coach educator versus a coach that has a ton of success on the field coaching their team. And it's because they're a big name coach. Let's use Bruce Arena. Bruce Arena is one of the most decorated coaches in our game in the United States. He doesn't look at himself as a tremendous coach educator, and so I have to work through the balance of celebrity versus who's the best coaching educator. I feel this year's convention 2020 is an unbelievably strong coaching education platform. And with that being said, we've got Jill Ellis. Jill Ellis is an amazing. Obviously, she's had some amazing success, and probably the most popular coach right now in the United States. And she's going to be there. Anson Dorrance, Laura Harvey. She was, coaching Seattle Reign. Now she's the U20 national team coach. She's going to be coaching. We've got 16 sessions with MLS. We've got Gary Kernine. We've got Todd Dittmer, who's the English FA goalkeeper coach. We've got Bill Bessick, who's one of the top psychologists surrounding the game globally. Todd Bean, April Heinrichs, Hugh Menzies, who coached the women Jamaican national team. We've got other clubs, international clubs that are represented, such as Benfica, and we've got other clubs like Pachuca, and La Liga is represented. So we've got something for everybody.
Yeah, I was looking at the lineup of the international clubs. I also saw a Dortmund logo somewhere on the website.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to know too, as much as you're able to, can you give us a little window into kind of what some of those conversations are like? Because I think some people wonder, well, how does this work? Are they paying these figures and coaches to come and present, or are they doing it out of their own, just taking their own time and trouble? And is there a negotiation process? Could you give us maybe just a little insight into how you lock down this enormous roster of talent?
It's always a fun time, and it's a fluid process. Meaning, I could probably schedule the next 3 conventions out of uh, out of the people that we actually turn away. Um, and it's a good combination. We've got different, I call them diploma managers. So you can look for this on the website, United Soccer Coaches Convention.org, and see the different diplomas that we have. And so we've targeted, Ian Barker, for example. He schedules and selects a curriculum and the presenters for the DOC, and we've certificate or the diploma. And then we've got other people like Lisa Cole and Paul Marco, 2 of our best coach educators in United Soccer Coaches, working and combining on a diploma for goal scoring and goalkeeping. And so they help put together the little curriculum for these 12 sessions and who's presenting and that. So we've got the curriculum and the diplomas that are offered, but then there's other sessions as well. And we try and be as diverse as possible, and diverse as far as topics, diverse as levels of the game. And so every hour there is something for every level of coach or every type of coach. So it's almost too much to choose from, and that's why I recommend people to download the app for the convention. And even if you can't go, you can follow along. It's on anybody's app store, and it's BMORE 20, so BMORE 20, and coaches can go in there and set their own schedules, set reminders, take notes, follow us on social media, see who the presenters are, all of that. And that's a helpful tool as we're talking about this. But the process of finding these presenters, most of them do it just for expenses. Most of them are supported by their club or their team or their university from the standpoint of it's, here's the stage, and and a lot of them are doing it to get their name out there, and because they want to give back to the game a little bit. But we've got some small stipends out there as well.
Mm-hmm. And what's the pitch that you would make to a parent or a coach who's maybe not sure about paying the money? Because there is a cost. I think you guys offer those day passes, especially for Saturday, that I'm sure are really popular. But how do you sort of convince people who might be on the fence?
Well, there's nothing like it in the world. There's such an energy and a buzz in the convention center. Like I said, there's something for everyone at every hour. And we've done some things where we've tried to mold, Podcast Row and the exhibit hall and the sessions together, and everybody's approachable. It's amazing. One of my first ever conventions, I just remember, oh my gosh, that's Anson Dorrance, and he just talked to me, or whether it's Randy Waldrum, or you never know who you're going to bump into around the corner, around each corner, and who you're going to walk in and sit next to at a session, and that type of thing, and those are some of the things that we can talk about. But you can't really describe on a marketing material or things along those lines. So you got to come check it out. The energy, the opportunity to learn, not only from the presentations, but to my point of you never know who you're going to sit next to or meet up with. You're going to learn a lot from talking the game with the person sitting next to you. And the game is a global game, but it's really small. From the standpoint of when you get into Baltimore, you're going to meet new people, and that usually has the biggest effect on people more than just sitting there and taking notes.
Well, Geoff, thanks so much for your time. And if there's anything else you wanted to share that you think we didn't cover, now would be the time. Any thoughts?
Well, I just think The website, UnitedSoccerCoachesConvention.org, gives everybody the information on registration and where to go and where to be. The app also has a lot of that information, Be More 20. And it's something you got to check out. And I think once you come, you'll be hooked.
Well, yeah,
it certainly got me.
I agree. I haven't missed one since I went to my first one. So it's just something where even when you might have trouble getting up the energy in the wintertime, you just have to be there. So thanks again so much. Again, you're probably the busiest guy in soccer for the past 30 days, other than maybe MLS GM or something like that. So thanks again, and we will hopefully see you in Baltimore.
January 15th to 19th, folks.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being on.
Okay, Geoff. Thanks so much.
Likewise.
All right, everybody. So thanks again to Geoff VanDeusen for joining us. And like I said, the busiest guy in soccer as he's getting ready for the Baltimore USC Convention. It's being held next week, January 15th to 19th. Definitely recommend going. As Geoff said, UnitedSoccerCoaches.org, and download the app at Be More 20. We'll be broadcasting next week's podcast episode live from the floor of the exhibit center in the Jefferson Cup booth on Friday. So if you're around the show, if you've had some of those free beers Thursday, we'll see you on Friday. Stop by and say hi, and maybe you'll even get to ask a question of our special guest on Friday. Okay, so let's take a break.
If you run a youth soccer tournament and are looking to attract more teams or increase the quality of teams you attract, SoccerWire.com is the place to turn. You can list your tournament in our online directory for life for a small one-time fee. And for even more exposure, you can feature your event annually to unlock many more branding features and automatically include your event in our weekly email blast. The Soccer Recruiting and Tournament Wire to over 80,000 subscribers across the country. To browse our tournament directory or submit your own event, visit SoccerWire.com and click on the tournament link in the top menu. And if you manage 5 or more events, simply use the Contact Us link to request a custom quote.
Welcome back to the weekly SoccerWire podcast. I'm Chris Hummer, filling in for Mark Serber, and we're joined now by producer Bridget Baker to tell us all about this week's featured players.
Thanks, Chris. You're doing an okay job at this. But because you pay my salary, you're doing a great job. We're proud to announce our first featured players of 2020. We're going to start with Annalise Irwin, a defender and forward for Eastside FC out of Duval, Washington, playing in the ECNL. She is going to be in the class of 2021. She describes herself as a fierce competitor on the field, a great friend, and a supportive teammate. So she also says she's very motivated, organized, loyal, positive, and coachable. You can see her profile on SoccerWire.com, as well as our next player, Otto Fox, out of Woodbridge, Virginia. He's a midfielder and forward graduating in 2020. He's currently playing in our partner Club Champions League for Northern Virginia SC. He is a captain and center midfielder for NVSC 01-02 boys in the CCL Premiership. He has been chosen for the Super Y and USL Experience team that played in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, both of these profiles, as well as highlight videos of our featured players, are all on SoccerWire.com. We've got also a few upcoming tournament deadlines that I wanted to get in there. Premier Cup in San Antonio, Texas. That deadline is February 15th for the tournament, March 13th through 15th. Our partners, Club Champions League Generation Adidas National Cup, held in Richmond, Virginia. Those applications have been extended to January 12th for the tournament, February 15th through the 17th. Loudon Soccer, another one of our partners, are having their college showcase in Leesburg, Virginia, March 6th through 8th, and those applications are closing February 10th. And again, another partner with VDA, their college showcase in Woodbridge, Virginia, held the weeks of February 8th for the girls and February 15th for the boys. Those applications are closing on January 12th. And then again, one more shout out. I want to shout out again our partners, Club Champions League, for the opening of registration for their Next Gen Maryland. The Next Gen Maryland U9 through U10 League will have outside teams and will follow a team-based model. And more information on that can be found on SoccerWire.com and as well as the Club Champions League website.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Bridget. Best of luck to everyone taking the next step in their soccer careers. Certainly, we hope that getting them profiled here in SoccerWire will help their recruiting process, but they'll also earn everything they get with their own hard work. All right, now we're going to move into the Heard on the Wire segment. All right, so the first thing I've heard on the wire, it's not really news to anybody, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to jump in and talk about, is MLS Draft is not going to be live at the convention this year. Charlie, what's going on?
This is the draft is still happening, so it's important to mention that. It's just happening as a sort of an online live stream event and this is as we record, this is happening tomorrow. So I'm eager to see how it unfolds. But it reflects the reality that the Super Draft is a smaller and smaller chunk of the roster building mechanisms that MLS uses, with the growth of the academy system, kind of pressuring it on one side, and then the increasing spending in the foreign market, leading to sort of different sources for talent. That said, and so the league is saving millions, and happy to say that we broke the news about the Combine going away as well. The Combine and the draft together were a multi-million-dollar annual process that the league was spending on, and even with assistance from their big sponsor Adidas, that was just not worth the return on investment in terms of the sort of modest role that the draft plays. The perception, the conventional wisdom, is that outside the first 10 or 20 picks max of the draft, they're simply not, you're dealing with sort of lottery picks in the sense, because most of those players are going to be spending time in USL or maybe not catch on in the pro level at all. The idea being that the draft, or the academy system, has sort of filtered away a layer of elite talent out of the youth game straight into the pros. Now, I'll say my personal view on this is that our developmental system and our talent identification system, both on an MLS level, professional level, and as a national level as a whole, is still not working as efficiently as it needs to. It still can't keep up with the enormous scope of this country. So there will always be players who fall through the cracks, who bloom late, who are outside of the big metro areas where talent ID and talent cultivation at a high level tends to happen. And so the clubs that invest in scouting the college levels and the other kids that are in the draft can get diamonds in the rough. They're out there. There are current starters across MLS right now who are second-round draft picks. Meanwhile, there's clubs that pass on it, that simply don't even use all their draft picks now. So it's an interesting situation. It's unfortunate to see that the players who are selected don't get their moment in the sun where they get to walk up on stage and thank their families and share their stories, because there are some amazing ones. But we'll hope that they'll still be able to chase their dream. And unfortunately, we won't get to have that event as part of the convention, but the NWSL draft will be well positioned to step in there, I think. In terms of the draft this year, I'm really eager to see who becomes an MLS regular. There's always a few every year, as much as we sort of throw dirt on the draft and predict its demise. I'm particularly interested this year in the latest GA signing for MLS is Daryl Dike. He's a kid out of Oklahoma who you may have seen playing for the University of Virginia, took them to the College Cup final this year. He's the younger brother of Bright Dike, who is another really talented MLS player who's made it all the way to the Nigerian national team before injuries ended his career. Apparently, he's his little brother's agent, which is kind of fun. But Daryl is a beast. And I say this not just referring to his athletic ability, his size. He's built like a linebacker, but he's got good feet. He's added a ton of facets to his game, back to goal, number 9 type play. George Gelnevach and the Cavaliers coaching staff seem to have really coached him up. And I think he could become, upside there is national team level player, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, is this, with all those, let's find the silver lining conversations, is in 10 years, if there is no draft, will this be looked at as kind of like a moment that was just, the coffin starting to be nailed, or do you think it'll always be part of the U.S. soccer landscape?
No, I think you're right. I think shutting down the event as a physical activity is definitely a big signpost. I think what would replace the draft or really kill off the draft would be the league just letting teams sign college kids as free agents the same way as anybody else. Because right now there's this weird situation where if a player's rights are owned by a club that they don't want to play for, or they don't have a good relationship with, and this even happens with academy kids, they can leave the country and go play in Europe for 6 months or a year, or however long, or even go play in USL, and then their rights they can sidestep the draft. So it's this weird American ritual that we have with drafts, with pro leagues, that is kind of an awkward fit for the international game, where there's so many different teams and levels and countries and places to play. So if anything, I think it could be a net positive for players to have more control over their destiny by not getting drafted, by just getting the sign. So but MLS doesn't necessarily love those types of things institutionally, because those give more freedom to players and could potentially lead to players getting more money. So we'll see how they approach it.
You mentioned USL. The question there is a lot of, if not, again, not all, but most of the MLS clubs own a USL team at this point. If somebody gets drafted for an MLS team, are they bound to play for the USL team, or is that like all bets are off type of a situation?
There's a slight bit of gray area, but I'll just say I don't have the book in front of me, but my understanding is selecting a player in the MLS draft gives them their MLS rights, and then you can sort of assign them to your USL team. But there have been cases where, so for example, I think last year there was a goalkeeper that Atlanta United had in their system, but Dallas snuck in and actually drafted the player. So there was a gap between a USL player in the Atlanta system whose rights belong to another club. So there's little kind of fast ones that they kind of pull on each other to try and hold assets to ransom and that sort of thing. But in the big picture, yes, the majority of players drafted in the MLS draft are going to go either straight to USL, sort of as a prospect that gets assigned there within the club, or they maybe don't catch on with the team that drafts them, and their next step is for a USL team to give them a shot. And really, it's the draft probably has had more pound for pound more value for USL than it has had for MLS over the last few years.
I'd certainly just like to see, I mean, again, at the risk of sounding cold to the players that might get a moment to be discovered or drafted that may have found it hard otherwise to catch on with a team, the more our system mirrors the rest of the world, the better. I just think that's part of that natural selection, promotion, relegation, let it all come out on the wash type of a thing. And the deeper we get our minor league system here in the U.S., the better. So, clubs that own multiple, the smaller clubs can sell players to the next club. If somebody wants to go play in the third division and skip college and go to local community college, because like Joe Fuccinelli we had last, that version of just going around on a train, going around until you find a pro team and somebody recognizes your talent, you might actually get to go play some pro soccer and find yourself sold to Europe, as a 24-year-old. And all three clubs in the U.S. side maybe get a piece of the action. So I love that open system, but that's just me. All right, so staying with the pro game, we're going to go to the women's side. Who knows what is going to be official by the time this podcast airs, or when you've listened to it, of course, as always. But there was a huge trade in NWSL that was confirmed this morning, which is Wednesday. The Portland Thorns got the number 1 pick overall. In exchange for Emily Sonnet, U.S. national team defender, Caitlin Foord, the Australian national team player, is she going overseas, Bridget? Or
it's rumored that she might be headed to Europe.
Right. So it sounds like it might just be the rights for her.
It 100% is the rights.
Yeah. So they got their rights, and then the number 7 and 14 picks in this year's draft, all for the number 1 pick. And if you want to clip all these things together, we've got Stanford, Sophia Smith, current College Cup champion. There was heavy rumors confirmed by several very respected journalists in the women's game that said if the Thorns get the number 1 pick, that she's going to opt out and go pro. So we're trying to get confirmation. By the time you hear this, it might already be done. But it really, in the women's game, it sounds, when enough people know about it, it's usually very true. So it sounds like Sophia Smith's going to be a player that comes out of college early, following the footsteps of other sports, more on the men's side. And again, like I said before, the more of this free market system for me, the better. And she's going to be a Portland Thorn unless they trade her away or something silly like that.
Yeah, and I'm excited to watch her the next phase of her career, because we've been watching Sophia Smith since she came up through ECNL at Real Colorado, if I remember right. I think she first got into the national spotlight like maybe 15 or so.
Yeah, she's come all the way up through the youth national team system with U.S. Soccer.
Mm-hmm. And she's a really talented player. She's had ups and downs in her career already. I'm blanking on which year the World Cup she was involved in where she was out of form and didn't really show herself at her top level. There were confidence issues, I think, at the international level for her and some ups and downs. But now, like to watch her in the College Cup this past year, she was a force. She's a very complete player, likes to be in that wide channel. She's a striker who can drift out wide. She can run central. She can participate in a possession game. She can get out and run on the counter. She loves to run at players. It's the kind of thing that we need more of in the U.S. system. So I hope she takes the big leap.
And I don't know what's in the water out there in Colorado, but they are developing some really highly talented players. You've got Lindsay Horan, Mallory Pugh, Jordan DiViasi, who just turned pro last year out of Stanford, and now Sophia Smith. So they've got some excellent players out there in Colorado.
And check out Jalen Howell as well. She's rising through the system as well. Another protege of Real Colorado's longtime coach Lauren Donaldson, who's also does work with his native Jamaica's national team programs. Some real players, and it's fascinating because, probably 10 years or so ago now, I had a conversation with a college coach at an ECNL event who's there recruiting, and we were talking about questions he likes to ask recruits, things he looks for in recruits. And one of the things was he really wanted someone who is like a 24/7 soccer kid. He likes the kids that have a team they watch overseas, that they catch the European leagues and the pro games. They live the game. And he said that the Denver area was one of the pockets where he loved to recruit because the players tended to have a high IQ. They lived the game. They weren't just players. They were also fans and consumers of the game. And it was fascinating because now, like a few years later, this flood of Colorado talent came through. So hopefully they'll have an NWSL team to play on locally there one of these years.
Yeah, between Real Colorado and Colorado Rush, there's just an insane amount of youth national team and senior national team talent coming out of those two clubs specifically.
Well, certainly worth a study what's going on. The water is always a common comment, but it's not like it's all coming from one coach. So there's maybe something about the competitive structure of the youth game in Colorado.
Well, you can always look at the weather too. I mean, between Southern California, Texas, and Colorado actually has more mild, generally warmer temperatures throughout the year than a lot of people realize. So that's obviously a huge factor as well.
All right. Well, maybe we'll have a convention out there sometime. All right. So this news is pretty fresh. This came out while we were recording, and U.S. Soccer is hosting what's called a biobanding event in California with 6 California-based DA clubs, both on the boys and the girls side. So what the heck is biobanding again, Charlie?
This is a really interesting concept that I think should be implemented across the board, but we're not quite there yet. So I think every parent or coach that's listening to this probably has seen a game where there's one kid in the same age group who's a head and shoulders ahead of the other, literally in terms of size, physical size, or has had the growth spurt kick in a little sooner and is faster, stronger. Just those little individual irregularities in how kids grow, both physically and mentally. Biobanding is a concept that seeks to look a layer deeper, but beneath their age, and see what kids' biological ages are, and try and pair them up to compete against one another for not only for more fairness for the kids, but for a better player evaluation and just an overall more coherent idea of what the level of this kid is, what their upside is. Because let's be honest. There's kids that can hang in there and that learn really good habits before the growth spurt. Christian Pulisic, if you ever see the picture that's made the rounds when he first turned pro, of an absolutely toothpick-legged, skinny little kid who had to learn how to be smarter and more tactically aware, technically better than the bigger kids around him, right? And all too often, American soccer plays up and favors the early developers.
Well, he goes to the Premier League. He's probably hoping they do some biobanding in some of those games.
For sure. But so the Federation, foreign clubs have dived into this. Some really good talent developers like Southampton are really full on board with the biobanding concept. The Federation has done a couple of events. I think they're kind of feeling this out and trying to figure out what they can learn from it and if they can grow it. So we've got another event coming up in California here. I'm really hoping that everybody involved in it is getting a positive experience, is seeing the benefits, and maybe we can grow this idea, because so much of youth soccer conversations, in my experience, are wasted on people arguing about someone's age, or someone's playing up too far or not enough, or someone's, there's mismatches that seem to drive parents particularly crazy, and this would be the next level, I think, the next evolution.
Yeah, and just a couple other quick notes from the announcement from U.S. Soccer about this event. It's being put on by the U.S. Soccer High Performance Department, and one of the quotes in the article is from Tom Hicks, who's the manager of that High Performance Department. And he actually talked specifically about the girls' DA, and that prior to their 2018 biobanding event, there had been no existing research about this on the girls' side. And the just introducing this initiative from U.S. Soccer is actually kind of pioneering some education, some new policies and processes to improve player development across the DA and across the country in general. This weekend's event is going to be made up of players between the U14 and U17 age groups, and each club is putting together 2 teams, mixing up those rosters on a biological age, from biological age standpoint. And they're actually being grouped by sports scientists from U.S. Soccer. So they're helping all these clubs put together these bio-banded teams.
So do you feel like, we probably don't know, but what's U.S. Soccer's real role in this? Is it a facilitator to try to educate the clubs, and they pick California because it's warm right now? Or is this some kind of an ID event that's going to lead to something?
Southern California, obviously they're doing it in the winter. It's probably has to do with that. And obviously Southern California is just the ultimate hotbed pretty much for producing talent. So, and they can play outside in January. They're actually going to have representatives from even some English Premier League clubs that are going to be on hand from Southampton and Bournemouth. And they're going to be on hand to learn about this biobanding process in the United States, and even share some of their own insights with some things that have already been implemented in England.
This reminds me, this is maybe I can drop a little bit of a tidbit that may be of value to those out there listening. One of the hottest arguments, one of the firestorms of the past 10 years in USU soccer was the change of the birth year registration, right? And forcing the entire landscape to shift from a school year type age brackets to a birth year. I've heard that with kind of a little bit of a change of character, a change of mentality with the people who are running the federation, at least on a slight level, I've been given reasons to believe that they're taking a more open-minded approach to things, a more consensus-oriented approach. I'm hearing some quiet rumbles that it's possible that birth year age group stuff is going to be brought up again, or at least be reevaluated, and possibly even a backtrack happen. But to me, again, wouldn't it be great if we can get past this obsession with dates and ages and numbers on paper, and look at kids as where they really are in that moment in their development, both individual and technical in the game. I'd love to see biobanding become the law of the land. And again, I'm not sure it's the kind of thing that the Federation can just impose. We all know that those kind of rulings by fiat don't go over well with the membership, understandably. But again, let's hope there's more and more of these events that add to the conversation and keep it moving forward.
Well, you might have just broken some, maybe, I think I heard, I don't know, it's a possible, I
got to hedge because this is early in the process. But just if you think about what a pain in the butt that process was for so many people at the grassroots in terms of breaking up teams, forcing a whole new registration approach. It's utterly, again, maybe not one of the things that gets discussed the most on Twitter, but certainly one of the things that drives parents and coaches and administrators in the game crazy is was having to make that shift. So we'll see. Again, I think we can always look for ways to do things better on that administrative side, and I hope that there'll be some conversations, positive conversations ensuing in the year ahead.
Well, I think it's a good topic to remember to point out that the vast majority of the kids and the administrators that are involved in the sport in this country, they really do just want to let the friends play. It's recreational soccer, and it's not about trying to figure out, who the next Messi is right away, and overthinking aligning these age groups, which is where most of the backlash came. It was from the steadfast leagues, clubs. that were like, what are you doing making us do all these changes when everything was just fine, just because you're trying to identify, your regional player pool and that sort of thing. So to the extent of U.S. Soccer being involved with it, you know what? Just let them scout. They can figure out what age somebody is to be eligible for a FIFA event. Other than that, let's just get the players playing together. So I would love to see there not be this one-size-fits-all top-down approach to how youth clubs or leagues. But ultimately, it goes back to why they used to have 8-year-old kids sign player cards, because they were worried about the coach that games the system and shows up with the wrong kid to win some game in the middle of nowhere. So
America.
Absolutely. All right. So finally, this is something I never thought I'd hear, and it might not be too soccer relevant, but having come from spending so much time dealing with the professional game and what players want to eat, and my own aging body, I turned 50 now. I've already been ranting about this documentary called Game Changers on Netflix that actually dispels almost all of the mistruths or myths that I've heard over the years about being a vegan, but also being a high-performance athlete. And it's really eye-opening. I mean, there's so much cultural pressure to have this, you need to eat meat if you want to be a good athlete. And oh my goodness. I mean, if you want to see or learn about how not using any animal proteins in your body can actually extend your athletic career and make you a higher performance athlete, you got to watch a documentary. It's on Netflix. It's called Game Changers. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm going for a personal vegan challenge here for a couple of weeks, and maybe I'll keep everybody up to date on how that goes.
We will definitely revisit this topic in future
I refuse
episodes.
to believe this.
Again, and the documentary speaks for itself. I mean, every sort of gut reaction you think you have from your cultural experience and what you think it means to be, we need protein, you need to get your B12. Every myth or every sort of gut reaction the uneducated might think about what a diet should be for a high performance athlete. This addresses each one of those, and then it goes into some of the cultural things like, we have canine teeth as humans, so we were meant to eat meat. Well, so does a gorilla, and they will mess you up in like 2 seconds, and they never eat any meat. So it just addresses all those things that sort of. I just always thought was why an athlete should never be a vegetarian.
I think Big Vegan is clearly behind that documentary.
We got a true believer on staff here, and we got a skeptic. So,
well, I'm going to test it.
come.
If I come back as MVP of the over 50 tournament down in Orlando in 2 weeks, it'll be settled. Well, that'll do it for this week's edition of the SoccerWire podcast. For coverage of everything youth soccer, be sure to check out SoccerWire.com, your premier location for the best coverage in the youth game, or you get your money back. If there's something we missed or a topic you would like discussed, hit us up on Twitter @TheSoccerWire, or hop over to SoccerWire.com and click on the Contact Us link at the bottom of any page. Every Thursday, we put out our National Soccer Recruiting and Tournament Wire. And for those of you in the Mid-Atlantic region or tri-state regions up there in New York, we send out twice weekly local news roundups on Tuesdays and Fridays. Just click on the newsletter link on SoccerWire.com to get the best of SoccerWire in your inbox. A reminder that next week we'll be coming to you from Baltimore at the United Soccer Coaches Convention, so be sure to follow us on Twitter @TheSoccerWire for live updates. In addition to the podcast, we'll be recording live from the Jefferson Cup booth on Friday and possibly even Saturday. So if you see a bit of a setup there, come on by and see us. For Quinn Casteel, Charles Boehm, and producer Bridget Baker, I'm Chris Hummer saying I hope Mark gets back from India safely, or maybe not, we're not quite sure. And you've been listening to the SoccerWire podcast.